And I was able to nourish that creative side of my spirit in music. I did that for a while, but I discovered that there's this other part of myself that needs nourishing, and that's the problem solving half. That's what I love about the data field that I ended up working in, is I can solve problems, but I also can do it creatively by creating visualizations, charts, graphics, telling stories. So I merged those two in the career that I eventually pursued. And now, as a public speaking coach for tech professionals, I have the privilege of being able to help people bridge that divide between technology and the business, or technology and non-technical audiences. I'm able to teach people how to communicate effectively and how to be clear, concise, confident with respect to their presentation. So it's been quite a journey from music to data to public speaking now, but I've enjoyed every step of the way.
Okay, Christopher, I think we are live right now, so we'll continue by introducing the audience. Good evening, everyone. I'm Moni Rao of Mechanical Engineering Branch of Batch 2K21. Welcome you all, and warm welcome to Christopher Chin. As we say in India, Namaste. We are very great to have you here. Christopher Chin transformed tech professionals into star speakers. He is a public speaking coach for tech professionals. Leveraging his 4+ years in data storytelling, data science, and data visualization field, he offers specialized public speaking and presentation coaching. Originally a composer and an accused engineer, he now fuses the creativity, dynamism, and technical expertise from his multidisciplinary background to equip developers, analysts, managers, and executives with the tools of confidence and giving a killer presentation. And we feel blessed to have you. Thank you for agreeing for this webinar.
Thanks
Now,
for the
I would
opportunity.
like to tell about MES that we meet our diversified challenges, and we want to bring out innovative approaches in mechanical engineering, both for holistic development, exposure, and connection. Now, handing over the session to Christopher Chen, I would request you to please share your knowledge on the art of public speaking. So you could continue, please.
Sure. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And as we were just chatting about a little earlier, my journey has been going through a lot of twists and turns before I got to where I am today. I used to work in music, and that was a point in my career where I was able to be the most creative. And later on, I transitioned into the data field where I could solve a lot of problems that were relevant to businesses. And throughout the entire course of my life, when I look back, I realize all of these different paths I took are motivated by my desire to tell stories, just in different forms. So telling stories through music or telling stories through data. And now what I'm able to do in my current public speaking coaching work is telling stories through the art of communication and public speaking, helping people prepare their presentations in an effective way.
Okay. As you have mentioned that you had a different background, the music composer. Were there some tips and learnings, or you found some common background that you could put that tips in this career? Because people, as I mentioned before, they think these are two different realms. You cannot collide. What are some specific lessons that you have learned that you would tell people that okay, this is how it could be used, or anything
The
that you
number
want to
one
share?
recommendation that I learned from my music career, my career in the humanities, is that the number one thing you should do when communicating with anyone or giving a presentation is knowing your audience. And in music, that manifested in me designing musical compositions for the audiences that I was performing or composing for. And in any technical setting, it's important to gear the terminology used to the people that you're speaking to. I actually studied mechanical engineering and acoustic engineering before, so I'm very familiar with the terminology that you use day to day. And one of the pitfalls that can often happen is the more technical knowledge we gain, the harder it becomes to explain that in a simple way for non-technical audiences. So it's important to always think about what kind of terminology does my audience care about? What do they understand? How to limit the technical jargon that I use so that I can enhance that clarity and the insights I want to convey. So the number one recommendation I would give is to know your audience, do your research on them, and make sure that you tailor your presentation material and the things that you say to their level of technical proficiency.
Yeah. As you mentioned right now that you have done mechanical engineering and you're aware of the technical jargons. But I would like to ask you, as you mentioned, your target audience. We are aware that your target audience is have a wide range, like from students to technical professionals, everyone. So everyone have their own way of visual understanding. How do you actually customize and specifically make them understand, because you cannot use the same set of uh, like presentation or the learning for them. How did you customize for your vast range of audience, as
I would
everyone is not
say,
aware of technical jargons?
right. And I think that the most important thing to make sure you know your audience well is to change the mindset that we take from the what to the why. So not just think about what material we want to tell our audiences about, but why does it matter to them? That's a crucial change in mindset, because as technical professionals like ourselves and engineers, we're always thinking about what can we say to inform our audience. But instead, we should think, what do they actually care about and why does it matter to them? In that way, for students, for example, if I'm talking to an audience of students, one of the things that they care about most hearing is, how do I get a job? How do I excel in my career? If I'm talking to an executive, what they care about most is, how can I make sure that my business succeeds? How can we make more profit? So I'm always thinking about, what are the top questions that my audience cares about and how can I address them in my communication?
So, do you think, as we as you deal with a lot of different kind of students, they might have this question that, okay, we are good in our fields, we are comfortable in our zones, we have so much experience, we don't want to add on to something which was not important a few years ago, like public speaking and this art of representation. So, how do you make them understand that this is a crucial part that they're missing?
Would you mind clarifying that question? So do you mean by that that a lot of engineers feel like they know all the technical stuff and they
Yeah,
don't understand the importance of communication?
yeah.
Okay. So to that, I actually have a story that I would like to share. And when I was working in a previous organization, I had a very talented colleague of mine, and he was a data engineer. So he would do all of the things related to pipelines and transferring data from place to place in the organization. Very technically proficient. And the disadvantage that he had was that he felt very uncomfortable when it came to public speaking. So when it came time to meetings, when it came time to presenting and demoing his work, he was very anxious, he was very nervous, he was very soft spoken. And as a result, the managers didn't understand the importance of the work that he was doing. He was eventually moved to an entirely different team because they didn't see his usefulness within our team. Through that example, I want to demonstrate how important communication is. You can have the most brilliant technical work that you've produced, but if you can't communicate why it's important to your audience, to your manager, to your boss, then that work does not have any value whatsoever. The most important thing is to tell the people who control your job why the work you're doing is important. So communication is essential, not in just technical roles, but in any role that you take later on in your career.
From being a tech professional to a public speaker, how is career-wise professional speakers are like orientated by the audience? As like our generation, a lot of audience do pay attention to this skill, the soft skill, but it's hard to make the other generation people understand. Basically, our professors or the people who are already they are well established in the fields. So how do you explain them that public speaker is a professional job? Because most of them, they do agree for seminars and webinars, but there's a huge gap of understanding which I've uh, seen.
And I've experienced as well. I would say
Hmm.
that I've interacted with many different clients and many different professionals across many different industries. And what underlies all of that is, again, like to what you said, there's this belief that knowing the technical stuff is good enough and working on the communication is not necessarily important. What I would challenge there is that as a professor, for example, what you need to do is communicate well to your students. Yes, you can do brilliant research, you can know all the stuff in your head, but to transfer it from your brain to the brain of your students, you need to be able to communicate well. And I actually had a client tell me that they had a friend of theirs who was a graduate teaching professor, and he thought he was giving his material in the most effective way to his students. It turned out, he found out later in the year, none of his students enjoyed the way that he presented the material. They didn't understand what he was saying. It wasn't presented in an effective way. And he realized too late that communication was something he hadn't worked on soon enough. In any field that you have, we have to talk to people. Yes, there is written form. Yes, there are slides, but throughout all of it, we have to actually communicate and communicate effectively. we need to take the information that we have and give it to someone else in a way that they understand. So I would argue for people of any generation in any field, communication is essential to being successful in your role.
Okay, as you mentioned that you have taken a lot of webinars for this session, how would you say that like body language and the way you carry yourself, how you convey your confidence, it's a very crucial way and it is a very important part of public speaking, because when you're standing alone on the stage, everything matters from the second you walk in, from your target audience, the way you talk, your eye contact. So how are you able to make your students understand through a very virtual portray, because we are having webinars and we wish that people like you we would meet in person to like understand the importance of body language. So how are you dealing with that?
Absolutely. I think one of the disadvantages of these virtual settings is that body language is so limited. So, for example, you can only see my hands right now and the top half
Yeah,
of my face. You can't see the rest of my body. I can't move around the stage and I can't be
yeah,
interactive with you as the audience. That's something I could do in person. The other disadvantage is that eye contact is very difficult sometimes. So, right now, I'm trying to look at the camera so that you can see my eye contact, but that's sometimes difficult to do because I want to look at my audience. So
yeah.
in a virtual setting, there are a lot of constraints on how effective we can be with our body language and eye contact, but we can still try our best. So for example, in a virtual setting, trying to look at the camera when you're speaking to the audience is a way to make sure they know that you're speaking to them. And body language, instead of restricting your expression to just your voice, try incorporating your hand gestures into what you're saying to reinforce certain points you're making. And so the lesson that I hope to convey through that is just to make do with what we have. Yes, I have this small box to express myself in, but I can try and maximize that as much as possible.
Okay. Um, I would like to add on to the question how to speak confidently in front of camera about your work or any topic. As we know, a lot of us are camera conscious. And even though people are great speakers in person or on stage, they kind of freeze when they are like in front of the camera. But as we know that right now we are constrained, as you mentioned, these online webinars. So how to overcome this? How to overcome this lack of confidence in front of the camera?
The biggest recommendation I would give to that is to practice recording yourself on camera in a safe setting. So if you're by yourself at home, then take the time to record yourself giving whatever presentation you're hoping to give or practice whatever communication you want to deliver. By doing that, you can watch yourself in a safe setting. No one is judging anything that you're doing. You can perfect the way that you give that eye contact, the way that you use your body language, the way you use your voice. You can see areas of improvement very easily. And again, no one is going to judge you for that. When it comes time to your important day to actually present, you can come prepared and know exactly what you need to do to give a good impression.
I have a very curious question adding on to this. As the whole session is about the art of public speaking, there's a very controversial topic about accents. Do we have to adapt ourselves to a accent that like our audience majorly use, or is it okay for you to have a certain accent and you could still go on with your sessions? What would you recommend?
Could you clarify that for me? So by accent, you mean just like a regional accent, like
Yeah,
for this audience speaking with the accent that you do versus my accent, which is very strongly American. Is
American
that what
accent. Yeah,
is that what you mean by accent?
yeah.
Okay. I would say the thing that I focus on most in my work is to not turn every person that I work with into one model of a good speaker. Every single person has something unique they can bring to their speaking potential. And that's what I hope to do for every single person. So if you have your own unique accent, your own unique way of speaking, your own unique mannerisms, my role is to enhance those and make sure they're maximally effective for the people you're speaking to. So I would never say to someone, you have to change your accent because the people you're speaking to are from America. I would say that you need to enhance the aspects that make you uniquely you, because that's what you can bring and that's what will make you memorable and that's what will make you feel the most authentic. So don't try to be someone else. Just bring out the qualities within yourself and just dial them up to 10,000%.
Because a lot of the audience were we have live chat, so they were mentioning this, that do we have to pay attention to an accent, because this brings down their confidence that we are not acquired to a certain kind of accent. So they feel like, okay, maybe I'm not good enough. This whole question comes down to maybe I'm not a good speaker just because of my accent. And thank you for clarifying, as you mentioned, just be yourself, and authenticity and genuineness counts. So thank you for telling us that. Um, as you told us, could you tell what is the most important thing to remember when delivering a business case study? As we are talking about, you are a professional public speaker who have taught a lot of tech professionals. So, what are the important things that you tell them to deliver in a business study case?
And could you clarify what you mean by business case study? So is that just, for example, if you're working in a business and there's a project you worked on? So what did you mean by business case study?
Basically, the whole presentation part, when they are interacting with the audience, when they have to present their product, the main and crucial final part.
Mm-hmm. I would say that the thing I always recommend for any presentation in any field, for any audience, is that you have to know what action you want the audience to take at the end. So what I often say is that the purpose of a presentation, the number one purpose of it, is not to give information to your audience. It's more than that. It's to inspire them to do something based on your information. So I'm talking to you right now, I'm giving you information about public speaking, but my hope is that this inspires you to do something with that information and to work on your public speaking. So it's important to not just think about facts to give your audience, but think about how to arrange them in a way that gives them an experience such that they're inspired to do something based on those facts. So in a business case study, for example, if you're talking to an audience about something that you built, something that you engineered, it's important to think about what action should they take after they leave the room. Do you want them to use your product? Do you want them to give you more money to work on your initiative? You need to think about those questions and orient your presentation in a way that lets you persuade them to do those things.
As most of our audience are students right now, so we have a lot of projects and we have a lot of presentations to give based at the end of our BB career. So what would you tell, what are the important things to remember as a well structured presentation, and how we can incorporate them in our own presentation? Like, is there any key features you use, or a kind of software, or what are your game plan which makes you, or which sets you different from others?
I would recommend that the first thing you do should not be to create slides, because what often happens is that when you're asked to give a presentation by your teacher, by your professor, by your manager, eventually by your boss, the first thing a lot of people do is they jump into creating slides, whatever tool you want to use, PowerPoint, Google Slides, whatever it may be. And that is a pitfall, because if you jump to creating slides, it's very difficult for you to know how to outline your presentation well. What I recommend is that you outline your presentation first, know everything you're going to say, know all of your main points, know where everything is going, know that action you want people to take at the end, and then create the slides to support that. Don't use slides as your crutch that supports the entire presentation. The slides just need to be visual aids for what you're saying. They need to complement what you're saying instead of repeating it. So don't treat slides as the presentation. You yourself are the presentation.
As I'm not aware how it's in America, but majorly in our classes or in our colleges, it's more like professor come with a PPT and they would just like show us slides, and then it becomes so tedious because at the end of a timeline, everyone is not interested. Some even forget what the topic was about. As you said, you don't have to go straight to making slide because it's a pitfall. What are the different tools and software one should be knowing for an effective presentation then, if not following the traditional PPT?
The best tool that you would use to design an effective presentation is just pen and paper or just typing out notes. It really is that simple, because people have been giving presentations for as long as human beings have been here, way before technology was invented, like computers. We've been able to do that orally perfectly well before that. So what's happened in modern times is that we become so attached to our technology that we forget that the art of presentation is just us. What I recommend to many students is that you should be able to give your presentation without your slides at all. They should just be there as a bonus to help you deliver. You should be able to give your presentation just yourself and know all of your points by heart and be able to talk through them freely instead of relying on the slides for all of your notes. So yes, the biggest tool that you would need is pen and paper, just to outline everything you need to say. And again, this avoids the problem of that what you expressed, that professors have all these PPTs and people get very bored because they're just going through slide and slide and slide, and it's just all these facts. How can you absorb all of that? Instead, the better approach is to outline what you need to say and then make the slides very sparse, just complementing the things that you're saying instead of, again, repeating it.
As you mentioned, the whole solution comes down to a very simple thing: pen and paper. So would you say that technology have not enhanced but deteriorated our art of speaking? What are your thoughts on this?
I think that technology can enhance our speaking if used well. So with any tool that we have, we can use it for advantageous or disadvantageous in advantageous or disadvantageous ways. So for example, our phones, we have access to the whole entire internet on it. We can spend hours scrolling on social media platforms endlessly and not do anything productive. Or we can use that technology to research what we want to say and use that technology for productive purposes. So with PowerPoint, for example, it's a fantastic tool, but people use it ineffectively in the ways that I mentioned. So I would say that technology is dangerous and also has so much possibility within it at the same time. And we just have to know how to use it well.
Uh, as you said that you worked with a lot of data analytic terms, what are your thoughts on data analytics as a career option? Because a lot of us are students, so could you tell us what are the scopes and what are your thoughts on data analysis?
I've actually worked with many engineers who've transitioned into data analytics, myself being one of them. I was originally an engineer and I became a data analyst. I would say it's an excellent career path, especially for those of us who want to try something new but don't want to pay for an entire new education. So, and in the US especially, that education can be very expensive. So the advantage of data analytics is you can learn everything you want online. You can create a portfolio online to demonstrate to future employers. You can do all of that for free. And you can network, you can do all of those steps and not have to pay for a formal structured program. In the actual job itself, what you do is you help the companies analyze their data. Companies have tons and tons of data that they're sitting on. They don't know what to do with it. So they're relying on your technical expertise to make sense of it, pull stories out of it, tell them insights and actions to take to improve the business. So I would say that it's a very lucrative and it's also a very rewarding career path for those who are interested in it.
What was your motivation, or was this something you always wanted to do as a kid, or was it something you discovered through your college life or as you grow older? So, what was your motivation for this career shift from being an engineer to a data analyst?
Right. It definitely was not something I thought I wanted to be as a kid. As a kid, I wanted to be a composer and I wanted to be a writer. So I wanted to tell stories just in different ways. But over the course of my career, I discovered that I was interested in different things. And I saw a post on LinkedIn about this recently. And the advice is don't try to follow your passion, try to follow your curiosity. Because when you try to follow your passion, you feel like you're pigeonholed into one thing you need to do for the rest of your life. And maybe sometimes you don't have a passion about something very strong. But instead, if you follow your curiosity, then you can have the flexibility to try different things. You don't have to feel stuck. You can continually pivot to new and exciting opportunities. And that's what I did in my career. I said, okay, I'll try engineering for a bit. I enjoyed it. But I said, okay, there's something here missing that I want to try something new. I want to try something new to fulfill that gap. And I tried data analysis. And that was fulfilling for a time. And I shifted to different roles within that industry. And finally, I've settled on what I'm doing now, public speaking coaching. But who knows, maybe I'll transition to something else. So the lesson there I hope to convey is to, it's not something that you should feel like you have to set in stone and pursue it for the rest of your career, but try and follow your curiosity and try new things. You might find that it's the most rewarding thing you've tried.
I loved what you said, that follow your passion, not to follow your passion, but to follow your curiosity. And this is a very beautiful line, and I've never heard of it before. And I think this will stay with me and my audience. As you mentioned that you wanted to become a writer, and digging up your previous career backgrounds, that you were a writer. As you said that right now you're working as a data analyst. Data analyst, well, the first thing that comes to our mind is that it's a very structured job. How you as a person who was so
Time working as a data analyst, I had to rely on both those sides. And both sides came out in different ways throughout my time working in the industry. So I could be creative at certain points in my job by creating visualizations, creating dashboards and reports, and telling stories during presentations. But I could also, and for a large part of it, also needed to be very much relying on my critical thinking, problem solving, and the logical part of my brain. So yes, I had multiple parts of my personality that I just used for different parts of the job.
So, how would you recommend us as students to? Because the thing is, traditionally and by society, we are repetitively told that we should have a game plan, we should have set goals, and we should develop our skills accordingly. So, I was thinking, like, how did you break out from that norm? Did you had some sessions, or did you had like amazing mentors? Could you recommend us how we break down to that social norms and follow our curiosity?
I experienced that very strongly, actually. And I was initially set to become a doctor at one point in my career. And that was the
Okay.
big, well paying job that I wanted to pursue. But I told myself that, and I realized that if I pursued that career, I would not have been happy. It was not something that I was interested in. So it wasn't even something I was curious about. And so it was a very big struggle. And especially coming from, for me, an East Asian background where you don't want to disappoint your parents. And this may be something that is relatable to this audience as well. If it's, and the societal expectations as well. It was very hard to break away from that. But I realized that, and this may be also the American part of my upbringing coming forth, but I realized that if I didn't pursue my individual passions and curiosities, then I was going to be unhappy the rest of my life and I would have regretted it. So it was a lot of personal growth on my part, a lot of deep thinking about what I wanted to do and how I would pursue it. And I told myself, if I choose something different that's not according to societal expectations, then I'm going to do my best to achieve that. And I'm going to set that goal and I'm going to strive for it as best I can. So it's very hard. It's very difficult. But I would encourage everyone to really think about what they want to do and not be afraid to pursue it. And yeah, just try their best. That's all we can do, is just try our best.
I think we share common grounds here. As you mentioned, your upbringing of South Asian community, and we as like Indians, we have this whole term that our parents want engineers and doctors. It's been deep rootedly like in our childhood that they want lawyers, doctors, and engineers, and they feel like these kind of jobs are that would give you security, that would give you a stable life. But as you mentioned, not to follow your passion, but to follow your curiosity, it's a very unstable path. How did you find the courage to move on, and how did you had the like motivation that, because life do like throw you challenges, it tries to bring you down, your parents at your home when you want to feel safe. How did you keep on going for all these years?
That's an excellent question that I've actually never been asked. But I would say that the way I was able to challenge just like friends, that would support my journey. And in this virtual world where we can to anyone across the world, I would highly recommend that if it's something you want to pursue, something that you're curious about, that you want to make real as your career, I would highly recommend that you talk to people who have those careers already. So on LinkedIn, for example, if you're already on the platform, find people who are in the industry you want to have a chat with them. See if it's something that you actually want to try out. It's about how to manage the industry. It's about how successful the job would be, difficulties, and that kind of position. The more you know, the more you empower yourself to take that path. And the people, the easier it becomes for you to feel motivated and feel supported in taking that path as well. So the biggest advice I would give kept me going was being as many people as possible, doing the thing I wanted to do, and also just just leaning on my support network as much as possible.
That was, and I feel like this is one of the best advice that someone would have done, because we are very lost, being very honest, as students who have a lot of pressure from parental and society. As you mentioned, that we should reach out to people and have strong network from LinkedIn. Uh, the whole journey starts with you presenting, you reaching out to people, presenting your portfolio, then you're going for interviews. How to tackle those interview questions? Because as we know, the traditional interviews were different, and right now the soft skills and the way you present yourself, interview questions have developed and changed over the past years. How to tackle those interview questions now?
What I recommend for my clients who I work with when it comes to interview coaching is to, again, record yourself giving answers to the most common interview questions. So, and this is what I've experienced with you as well. I ask technical questions, behavior questions. So it's like, what's your greatest weakness? Tell me when you fail. Tell me about a time that you. So it's important to give feedback for those kinds of questions. No, you're going to ask that. So I remember some clients, and every here, your background about stories you can share for each of those different scenarios. So a story about what's weakness, how did you improve, something that you left, or that you manage results. So think about all those different things and compare the interview.
There are a certain portion of technical questions asked, but the most questions are on your personality. So, are there any websites or mentors, any self-help book that you would recommend, or you do read by yourself, that have helped you to grow as a person as you are right now? Like with all this wisdom and everything, like you have the most convincing answers for our questions, and I feel like because I have a lot of queries about how to deal with a lot of problems, and the way you're explaining each one of them with so much ease, this is what I want to learn and our audience would love to learn. So are there any recommendations of self-help book or mentors or any websites or any exercises?
I would recommend for books, there's Atomic Habits by, I believe it's James Clear. And that's one of the biggest recommendations I typically give, because that teaches you that it's not about necessarily setting big, lofty goals for yourself, but setting smaller habits you can build over time that build towards those goals. So for example, if everybody, at least here in America, we have the New Year resolutions. So every time it turns the new year, we say, okay, for the next year, I have all these goals that I want to do. So for example, I want to lose 20 pounds this year. What happens is that people don't end up fulfilling those goals because they're just too hard to accomplish. They don't know how to break it up into small steps to reach losing that 20 pounds. Instead, what you can do, and this is what the book talks about, is breaking into small things you can do every day and then building upon that as the days go by. So on the first day, I'm going to go out for a walk for 10 minutes. And the next day, I'm going to go try and extend that by a few more minutes. And over as the weeks go by, you get better and better at achieving those small habits. And then eventually you achieve your goal, and it becomes a lot easier in that way. And in terms of other resources, I myself have my own website, which is thehiddenspeaker.com. I offer resources when it comes to communication and presenting data in particular and storytelling. So that's a resource that I can also offer. And yeah, those would be some of the recommendations that I would give when it comes to self-help. But of all is to just practice and get that feedback from your peers, record yourself, and be your own critic when it comes to communication. That is, to me, the best way everybody can improve themselves.
As you mentioned that the best way to is to practice and record yourself. A lot of people do suffer with speaking problem or the lack of confidence, or they have stuttering issues.